Greetings and welcome to Zord's modded space program, where I'm taking the original 3 crew for a little ride in this rover thing that I just designed to use as few parts as possible. And I like it. It came out good. It's functional and it looks kind of neat. So I'm gonna park it next to this other capsule here, and the reason for me putting these guys away is to give other Kerbals a chance to prove their worth. So now we have our first other Kerbal. He's gonna fly a mission to deploy the first communication satellites. Those are what's in the ugly fairing that's on the nose of the spacecraft. Since we're using remote tech, we're gonna have to establish a good communication network early on. So this is the first real mission, and we're gonna deploy a 4-satellite communication network. I'm going to show you how I do it, because I find this to be really interesting, because you get to use orbital mechanics to calculate how you're gonna do it. But before we can get that far, we're gonna have to get into orbit. And since I'm using all these mods, getting into orbit is far from trivial. I eventually manage, well, I manage because it takes a long time to fly this far, and now we have to extend our apoapsis to 7 million kilometers, and at about 6.3 I run out of fuel, which is bad, but I have RCS, which doesn't really help because it's a heavy spacecraft. So I decide to scavenge fuel from my communication satellites. Luckily, we're using the same fuel in the satellites and in the capsule, or the crewed craft. Using the stolen fuel, we are able to raise our apoapsis to the required 7 million kilometers. Once that's done, I start to balance the RCS and fuel, because I don't have a fuel balancer mod, so I do it by hand. And we start to pre-deploy the satellite. We're not going to deploy it, but we're gonna pre-deploy it. We're not gonna let the satellite go, but we're gonna extend the solar panels and the communication antenna so we can get solar power. What we are going to do is to raise our periapsis, and this is where the orbital mechanics comes in. How far do I have to raise my periapsis to make my orbit a specific fraction of the circular orbit? And I'm talking about the orbital period, because I want to deploy these satellites with even distances. So they have to be 90 degrees apart, because there's 4 of them. So how much altitude does my periapsis have to have orbital period that is 1 multiple of a fourth of the orbital period of the full orbit? I learned how to do this by watching Scott Manley's orbital mechanics on papers videos. There's 3 of them. And if you are interested, I recommend you check them out too. So anyway, we have released the first satellite. We have waited a couple of orbits so that we have a direct communication link with mission control. So the satellite is now under remote control, and we are circularizing its orbit, or the satellite is circularizing its own orbit. And we're deploying the last antennas, pointing one of them at mission control, because why not, and the other at active vessel. It's the active vessel one that's important. We don't actually have to point the second dish at mission control, but I don't know where else to point it. We can extend this network a lot more in the future. That's the point. That's why I have way more antennas than is actually needed. So we're balancing the fuel a bit. I want to have fuel in the spacecraft so we can return home. That's quite important. So we're scavenging more fuel from space probes, or the communication satellites. So we deploy number 2, very close to colliding with that separator, but no harm yet. So now you see we are the satellite we deployed is 90 degrees behind us, meaning that our orbit has a period that is 3/4 of the period of the circular orbit. So that's how you pick your periapsis, and you just crunch a bunch of numbers to get that. I may do a video properly explaining how to, but Scott Manley did it pretty well, I think. If you want me to do that video, please tell me. and I will see what I can do. So that's 2 down, 2 left to go. We deploy the solar panels, and we wait 1 more orbit. Around we go, and we're back at periapse. However, we do not have a communication link with mission control, and none of the other satellites is going to help us in this. So if we deploy this satellite now, it's going to be dead in the water. Or, well, it may, no, it can't be controlled through the capsule because you need more Kerbals. So what I'm going to do is hold on to it and wait 1 more orbit. So now we are in the 4th position, and now we have communications. So we let the satellite go, do the usual thing, circularize its own orbit, and now to get the 3rd, well, nice glitch, nice graphic glitch, to get the 3rd satellite, or the 4th, because we already deployed the 3rd, to get the 4th satellite in the 3rd slot, we're going to have to wait a few orbits so that we sync back up, because we have this orbital period, meaning that in 3 orbits we are going to be, whoa, okay, something bugged out completely, yeah. So after restarting the game, we find that we have 4 ComSat-1, 3 more than the one we actually deployed, and they are all on the same spot in space. So we're gonna have to delete those. I tried launching the game with and loading, and it promptly exploded and crashed. So that's the first glitch. Didn't take a very long time, did it? Yes, indeed. So where was I? Yes, deploying the final satellite in the 3rd slot. So again, we extend solar panels and some antennas and stuff in. And now we just have to wait. First orbit, we are back at position 1, so this is satellite 1, quite close actually. And 1 more orbit, we're at satellite 2. I wonder how close we are actually going to get. Well, it's not collision close, but yeah, that's quite close. So now we are at slot 3, which doesn't have a satellite, so we deploy one. This is the final satellite. This is the only one that actually has RCS fuel, because I screwed that up. Yeah, that was my bad. You learn a lot about how the new mods work by trying to accomplish things and failing. So we just need to circularize this orbit. It's more important that they have the correct semi-major axis, more so than that they're perfectly circular. And I'm going to have to correct this a few times, I think, as the series progresses. So we deploy the last antennas and rename this ComSat-4, which is mildly misleading because it's in the 3rd position. But anyway, we have the communications network, it's up and running, everything's working, and now we just need to get this poor Kerbal home. He's been up here for way too long already. Luckily we have a few drops of fuel, hopefully enough to lower our periapsis into the atmosphere, and well, apparently the RCS system isn't working. Maybe I forgot to check that box as well. Well, we didn't have a lot anyway. So let's just lower our periapsis. We need to get it below 100,000 meters because that's the atmospheric altitude in this game, and we failed. The periapsis stops at about 128, I believe, and then we are at fuel. So we're gonna have to go out and push. This is a scenario where this is almost a valid strategy, even. We just have to lower the periapsis a little bit and then we can air brake. But it's not very simple, and it takes a long time because you're trying to push a multi-ton spacecraft down from orbit. Anyway, after doing a bit of pushing, I have lowered my apoapsis to 85,000 meters, which is enough to give us a bit of air braking. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't actually know how efficient this is going to be, but I sincerely doubt we're going to have to do less than, or I very much expect that we're going to have to do more aero brakings than this one, because we already passed periapsis, I believe. Yeah, but we at least know that we we have braking capacity, aero braking capacity, so we can let go of the empty tank and engine, giving us less mass that our Kerbal had to push. So, after doing a bit of pushing at the apoapsis, we're coming back for another aero braking because it's actually more efficient time-wise than using the Kerbal to push it. So we're looking at, and unexpectedly, we are captured. We're actually going down and not coming back up this time, which is great. So let's arm the parachutes and watch the fireworks. Yeah, we're getting some re-entry heat, and we're using our ablative shielding. I'm gonna have to take care of those debris later, but it's not a problem, because this is what we're designed to do. And the parachutes deploy, and everything's looking good. Or, as you say in space terms, nominal. And as we gently descend toward the surface of the ocean, we are going to get bored, so I decrease the playback speed a little bit, and fast forward through the most boring parts. We are really just falling very slowly towards a soft ocean, waiting for the parachutes to deploy fully. By the way, the new parachutes, I think I said this before, but they look great, and they do a lot for the feel of the game. It feels a lot more realistic when you have huge parachutes. So there we go. Mission complete. The communications network set up. Look at that, it's beautiful. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time.